Hello, folks. So, as you can see, I got everything ready to go. I'm gonna dive in, try and do random page reading, and this is Make It To The Dogears. So here we go. Try this one. Psychoanalytic movement. Now I'm gonna try and have conversations with authors, see what I can come up with. 1938, Chancellor Schutzmann was forced to resign under pressure from Hitler. Nazi henchman Arthur Seyss-Inquart took over the government and invited the Germans into Austria. The Austrians was accomplished. German troops poured over the border Nazis and broke out in full force in Vienna, releasing Austria's own considerable anti-Semitism. Jewish apartments, stores, and synagogues were ransacked. Thus, from the neighborhoods searching for victims, men and women were being humiliated in the streets. And then it says, after some anxious weeks, the Freud party was permitted to leave Austria. Martha, Minna, Mathilde, and her husband, and the late Sophie's son Ernst all left for England. Martin and her son Anton Walter also left for London, while his wife Esty and their daughter Sophie went to Paris to stay with Esty's younger sister. Freud's younger brother Alexander's wife and his son Harry managed to get out to Switzerland, then to England, finally to Canada. In addition to these family members, the party included Freud's pet Chow, the housekeeper Paula Fitchell, and Max Scher's wife and their two children. For instance, Rosa, Mitzi, Pauline, and Dolphy, the oldest Anna, had been living in New York since the turn of the century. All in their 70s were left behind in Vienna. Jones later wrote that Freud and Alexander left them with a considerable sum of money, though this proved useless when the Nazis confiscated Jewish bank accounts. Let's try this one. Efficiency, flexibility, and the dual process brain. When my son was first old, we read over and over a book called Everything Bug, What Kids Would Want to Know About Insects and Spiders. It explains young spiders even know how to make perfect webs. They act by instinct, which is behavior they are born with. The good thing about instinct is that it's reliable. It always makes an animal act a certain way. The bad thing about instinct is that it doesn't let the animal act any other way. So young insects and spiders do fine as long as their environment remains pretty much the same. If they face a new situation, they can't think their way through it. They must keep doing what their instincts tell them to do. Of two moral minds. This is from Trolleology. We see evidence for dual process moral psychology in the lab and in the field, in healthy people and in people with severe emotional deficits. In studies using simple questionnaires and in studies using brain imaging, psychophysiology, and psychoactive drugs. It's not good that we have dual process moral brains, but why are our brains like this? Why should we have separate automatic and controlled responses to moral questions? This seems especially problematic given that these systems sometimes give conflicting answers, when it makes more sense to have a unified moral sense. Just try getting into some really random ones. Here's one. This is philanthropreneurship the eBay way, from philanthrocapitalism. Drayton admits that social entrepreneurship is not especially new. His organization, named after King Ashoka, a benevolent Indian ruler from the 3rd century BC, unified much of South Asia and pioneered innovations in both economic development and social welfare. Another of Drayton's heroes is Saint Francis of Assisi, whose followers, the Franciscan monks, inspired wealthy families in 15th century Renaissance Italy, such as the Medici banking dynasty, to create the world's first microfinance institutions, Monte dei Pietà. These civic pawnbrokers lent small sums of money to the poor, secured against such items as a cap, knife, or book. Motivation was not entirely wholesome. However, they hoped these organizations would starve Jewish moneylenders and business would drive them away. And that says, if being an entrepreneur is about taking risks, then philanthropreneurship means being willing to take risks in the people and ideas you back with your giving. Common criticism of traditional philanthropy by social entrepreneurs is that it has tended to be too risk averse. Drake certainly thinks so. In the early days of Ashoka, he approached many of the leading American foundations for seed money. I went to the lots of traditional foundations, they all said no. We cut across all their stovepipes because not one of them would risk any money on this idea. How could they miss it? Moreover, he adds, for social entrepreneurs to receive such a negative response is absolutely typical. Only 50% of social entrepreneurs in the Ashoka network have had any support from foundations in their first 5 years. The other foundation says it is like a venture capitalist, you have to stifle a laugh. Let's try this one. Here, this is about, looks like ADD, I guess. Are like, and there's no one ADD personality profile. Some adults with ADD are outgoing, others are withdrawn. Some can concentrate if they are interested or excited, while others have difficulty concentrating under any circumstances. Some enjoy risky pursuits and high levels of stimulation, while others crave solitude and quiet. Some have poor social skills, others are ardent people pleasers. They have ADD alone or in combination with other psychological conditions that often coexist with ADD. Let's see. The future for adults with ADD looks brighter today than ever before. Adults who are correctly diagnosed with the disorder can benefit by working with trained therapists and following the strategies in this book. The authors offer nothing less than a realistic message of hope. With treatment, adults with AD will be able to gain a sense of control of their lives and a positive sense of the prospects for a better future. From Mary McDonald, Richard. Try this one. This is the fundamentals of hope from the third source. That's about education. So let's write a couple of things down. Well, something in my mind is, I'm getting used to this, folks. Let's just try reading more. This is from the third source about education. The implications of this third rule are that if we're interested in improving the educational delivery system, we can start by harnessing the speed of light to support our efforts to not invest in a plethora of traditional reforms, trying to improve the efficiency of the current worker style with level 1 metaphors in the delivery system. Teachers, parents, students, classrooms, 180-day years, teacher training, merit pay, accountability, Teach for America, charter schools, doctors, universal preschool, etc. We're not facing an efficiency problem, we're facing a delivery system problem, where the current energy source being harnessed is primarily the manual labor of the teacher. Manual labor, no matter how sophisticated, is in the end just manual labor. Our goal should be to support the manual labor of the teacher, parent, student, the best technology available both at home and in school. The fourth rule is that software is the single most important component of the new educational delivery system. This software is intelligence that imitates the teacher's tasks and focuses the work bonus on providing an ideal instructional sequence for each child depending on the child's current needs. Then it says the heritage of the current educational metaphors. I might look to editing some videos later. We have a problem. Let's realize that the current educational metaphors are inappropriate for our time. They belong to the last century. They assume a fixed delivery system that is hundreds of years old, involving traditional elements we all grew up with, such as students, parents, school, classrooms, teachers, books, taxes, levers, curriculum, special education, tutoring, testing, grades, 180-day school year, vacation, and school boards. The underlying assumption is that most of the work is accompanied by three sets of workers: one, the teachers; two, the parents; and three, the students themselves. So they have a modicum of technology available in the form of books, representing stored work, blackboards, chalk and paper, and even occasionally overhead projectors and TV sets. So, we got a lot of information. And I'm going to spend my day looking through these. That's what I decided. I already worked out. What's out the limit? Oh, I got to check the time on this. It does work to work out. 8 minutes. This one's from globalization. I'm interested in globalization and the impacts it has on society and international regions. And I'm also interested in, maybe I should write some of these down, huh? Yeah, okay. So, European enslavement of Africans can be dated back to at least the 1450s, when Portuguese sailors traveling the coast of Africa began supplying an emerging European market for housed slaves. But it was the establishment of American and Caribbean colonies and plantation economies that provided a decisive economic push in the expansion of the slave trade. So what was it? Colonies and plantation economies. At the beginning of the 18th century, the Portuguese were overtaken by the British and squeezed by the French and Dutch as the triangular relationship between Europe, Africa, and Americas was developed into a routine circuit of commodity exchange of manufactured goods. Labor and agricultural produce. The number of Africans transported across the Atlantic is highly disputed. Estimates have ranged between 5 and 20 million. Contemporary historical debate has set on a figure of around 9 to 12 million people transported between 1445 and 1870. Roughly 325,000 slaves, 3% of total shipments, were transported in the 16th century, rising to 1.9 million. 76.7 million in the 18th, before declining in 19 to 2.6 million. Let's read one more little one. This is called People on the Move. It's from a globalization book. It says Historical Forms of Global Migration. Let's try this one. Comparable to these migrations were the enormous waves of Chinese migration, temporary, seasonal, and permanent, across Southeast Asia into the U.S., to a lesser extent Europe. In the USA, they formed the backbone of the workforce that built America's railroads and dug the earth in California gold rushes. Asian migration, America's railroads, and California gold rushes. Chinese workers also be found in Dutch plantations in Sumatra and the cities of the Transvaal. Given the diversity and the illegality of the coolie trade, I don't know what that is, I'll have to look that up. Data are inevitably fragmentary and there is considerable disagreement over total levels of migration. It's been suggested that at its height, annual movements to Southeast Asia involve 750,000 people a year. I should get a folder and put like each one in one. Over the 40 years between 1848 and 1888, Wang is estimated that around 2.35 million migrants left China. Scholars offered an estimate of 12 million migrants between 1815 and 1914. This lucrative trade is run by Chinese business operating in the south of the country. I'll just write globalization, slave trade, I don't know. And we'll put these down here. That works. I want a really random one. Let's try this one. Oh, this one I'm interested in. This is Guns, Germs, and Steel, one of the classics by Jared Diamond. I have another one by him called The Third Chimpanzee. And then there's another one. Let's see, so yeah, let's start with this one. This says Collision at Cajamarca. I'm going to read this whole 2 pages. The biggest population shift in modern times has been the colonization of the New World by Europeans and the resulting conquest, numerical reduction, or complete disappearance of most groups of Native Americans and American Indians. As I explained in Chapter 1, the New World was initially colonized around and before 11,000 BC by way of Alaska, the Bering Strait, and Siberia. Complex agricultural societies gradually rose in the Americas, farther south of that entry route, developing in complete isolation from the emerging complex societies of the Old World. After initial colonization from Asia, so well-attested further contacts between the New World and Asia involved only hunter-gatherers living on opposite sides of the Bering Strait, plus an inferred trans-Pacific voyage such as the sweet potato, South America to Polynesia. As for contacts with New World peoples with Europe, the sole early ones involved the Norse, who occupied Greenland in very small numbers between 8986 and about 1500. Those Norse visits had no discernible impact on Native American societies. Instead, for practical purposes, the collisions of advanced Old World and New World societies began abruptly in AD 1492. Christopher Columbus' discovery, quotes, of Caribbean islands densely populated by Native Americans. The most dramatic moment of subsequent European-Native American relations was first encountered between the Inca Emperor Atahualpa, Spanish conquistador Francisco Pizarro at the Peruvian highland town of Cajamarca on November 16, 1532. Atahualpa was absolute monarch of the largest and most advanced state in the New World. Pizarro represented the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. And then right there, I want to write down, there have been really a lot of forces in the world. And, well, let me just continue. I like it. Also known as King Charles I of Spain, monarch of the most powerful state in Europe. Pizarro, leading a raging group of 160 Spanish soldiers, was in unfamiliar terrain, ignorant of the local inhabitants, completely out of touch with the nearest Spaniards, 1,000 miles to the north in Panama, far beyond the reach of timely reinforcements. Atahualpa was in the middle of his own empire, millions of subjects, immediately surrounded by his army of 80,000 soldiers, recently victorious in the war with the Indians. Nevertheless, Pizarro captured Atahualpa within minutes after the two leaders first set eyes on each other. Pizarro proceeded to hold his prisoner for 8 months, while extracting history's largest ransom in return for a promise to free him. After the ransom, enough gold to fill a room 22 feet long, 17 feet wide to height over 8 feet was delivered. Pizarro reneged on his promise and executed Atahualpa. History's messed up, man. But I gotta get through these. Atahualpa's capture was decisively... I know. People are like us today from... You're right. Yes. Atahualpa's capture was decisive for the European conquest of the Inca Empire. Although the Spaniards' superior weapons would have assured an ultimate Spanish victory in any case, capture made the conquest quicker and infinitely easier. Atahualpa was revered by the Incas as a sun god and exercised absolute authority over his subjects, who obeyed even the orders issued from captivity. Months to his death, gave Pizarro time to dispatch exploring parties unmolested to other parts of the Inca Empire and sent for reinforcements from Panama. When fighting between Spaniards and Incas finally did commence after Atahualpa's execution, Spanish forces were more formidable. Thus, Atahualpa's captures interest us specifically as making a decisive moment in the greatest collision of modern history. There's also a more general interest because the factors that resulted from Pizarro seizing Atahualpa were essentially the same ones that determined the outcome of many similar collisions between colonizers and native peoples elsewhere in the modern world. And so Atahualpa's capture offers us a broad window into world history. Check the time. My phone can't do it for longer than 25 sometimes. I'll write this down. Conquest, Atahualpa, Pizarro. Okay. Let's grab another freaking random one. Go with my heart right here. Looks like it's okay. Claude McKay of the Harlem Renaissance, and I'll read just probably this one. She said, if I was so sure, then I wouldn't mind putting myself to a test by going home after I graduated, living as other girls live, going out to parties and dances and enjoying myself. Then if after a year or two I felt sure I could come back to see her and we would talk it over again. She tossed her head indignantly. I never dreamed Holy Mother would give me such advice. I was really shocked. I said, of course, I'd do anything she suggested, but I knew it was simply a waste of time. After I left her, I felt all mixed up, so I went to the shrine and prayed to the Blessed Virgin, found peace again because I knew she heard my prayer, and always loved me and see no harm ever came to me so long as I never lost my faith in her. She pauses and a look of growing uneasiness comes over her face. She passes her hand over her forehead as I brush her cobwebs from her brain vaguely. That was in the winter of senior year. Then in spring something happened to me. Yes, I remember. I fell in love with James Tyrone and was so happy for a time. She looked for an inside dream. I think it's from a play. Yeah, I think it's from a play. Oh well. Okay, let's see. Got this one. Got a lot of them. Okay. I'm not saying anything. I have better faith now, but people just question God, and this is from God is not great. I don't know why I gotta put that out there, but I gotta say it. And this is the case against secularism. Let's see. Accused of demonic possession or contact with the evil one was to be convicted of it. Orwell's first realization of the hellishness of this came to him early in life when he was enclosed in a hermetic school run by Christian sadists, which was not possible to know when he had broken the rules. Whatever he did, however many precautions he took, the sins of which you were unaware could always be made to find you out. It was possible to leave that awful school traumatized for life as many children have been. It was not possible in religious totalitarian vision to escape this world of original sin and guilt and pain. Infinity of punishment awaits you even after you die. According to the really extreme religious totalitarians such as John Calvin, who borrowed his awful doctrine from Augustine, an infinity of punishment can be awaiting you even before you were born. Long ago it was written which souls would be chosen or elected when the time came to divide the sheep from the goats. No appeal against this premortal sentence is possible. No good works or professions of faith can save one who has not been fortunate enough to be picked. Calvin's Geneva was a prototypical totalitarian state. Calvin himself, a sadist and torturer and killer, who burnt servitors from the great thinkers and questioners of the day while the man was still alive. The lesser wretchedness inducing Calvin's followers compelled to waste their lives worrying if they had been elected or not. It's Wilcott George Eliot's Adam Bede, an old English plebeian satire against the other sex, whom Jehovah's Witnesses the Plymouth Brethren, who dare to claim that they are the elect and that they alone know the exact number of those who will be plucked from the burning. Quote says, we're the pure and chosen few and all the rest are damned. There's room enough in hell for you, we don't want heaven cramped. I can see the religious ideologies can be that, but here we go. Thus, when the great anti-totalitarian anthology of the 20th century came published in 1950, its two editors realized that it could only have one possible name. They called it The God That Fell. Schleicher knew it sometimes worked for one of these two men, the British socialist Richard Crossman, as he wrote in his introduction to the book. For the intellectual material comforts are relatively unimportant, what he cares about most is spiritual freedom. The strength of the Catholic Church has always been the demands the sacrifice of that freedom uncompromisingly condemned spiritual pride as a deadly sin. The communist novice, subjecting his soul to the canon law of the Kremlin, felt something of the release with which Catholicism also brings the intellectual, wearied and worried by the privilege of freedom. And I just want to note one thing. Brilliant volume published in 1919 entitled The Practical Theory of Bolshevism. So I always like to... I write book titles down because those really have cool words. Let's see. Let me just dig in a couple more. This is from this is from either this book called This Will Make You Smarter, or from a book called Know This, and in it they have little excerpts on things that are really important to know. This looks like it's about information. Blinded by Data by Gary Klein. Psychologist, senior scientist, Macrocognition LLC, author of Seeing What Others Don't. I'll note that. So, the 23rd October 2015 issue of the journal Science reported a filled story about how some children in India had received cataract surgery and were able to see. On the surface, nothing in this instance should surprise us. Ready access to cataract surgery is something we take for granted, but the story is not simple. The children had been born with cataracts they had never been able to see. By the time their condition was diagnosed, they came from impoverished and uneducated families in remote regions. Regional physicians told the parents that it was too late for a cure because the children were past the critical period for gaining vision. Nevertheless, a team of eye specialists arranged the cataract surgery to be performed even on teenagers. Now hundreds of formerly blind children are able to see. After having the surgery 4 years earlier, one young man of 22 rode a bicycle through a crowded market. The concept of critical period for developing vision was based on studies of David Hubel and Torsten Wiesel performed on cats and monkeys. Results showed that without visual signals during the critical period of development, vision is impaired for life. For humans, this critical window was thought to close right by the time a child is 8 years old. For ethical reasons, no comparable studies were run on humans. Hubel and Wiesel were awarded the Nobel Prize in 1981 for their work. And physicians around the world stopped performing cataract surgery on children older than 8. The data were clear, but they were wrong. Results from the cataract surgeries on Indian teenagers disproved the critical period data. So I always question things. In this light, an apparent feel-good story becomes a feel-bad story about innumerable other children who were denied cataract surgery because they were too old. Consider all the children into the lifetime of blindness because of excessive faith in misleading data. Excessive faith in misleading data. The theme of excessive faith in data was illustrated by another 2015 news item. Brian Nosek and a team of researchers set out to replicate 100 high-profile psychology experiments that were performed in 2008. They reported their findings on the 20th of August 2015 issue of Science. Only about a third of the original findings were replicated. Even for these, the effect size was much smaller than the initial report. Other fields have run into the same problem. A few years ago, the journal Nature reported most of the cancer studies selected for review could not be replicated. In October 2015, Nature devoted a special issue exploring various ideas for reducing the number of non-reproducible findings. Many others have been examining how to reduce the chances of unreliable data. Yeah. I think this is the wrong approach. It exemplifies the bedrock bias. Write that down. A desire for a firm piece of evidence that can be used as a foundation for deriving inferences. Scientists appreciate the trade-off between type 1 errors, detecting effects that are actually present, false positives, type 2 errors, from detecting effect that is present, false negatives. So false positives and false negatives. I'll start there with this one, folks. Thank you.